Let's read Romans chapter 2. We're going to finish starting in verse 12, and we're going to go all the way to chapter 3, verse 8, which I want to encourage you. It's good. The chapters and verses in the Bible, guys, are not original. This might be shocking to some of you guys. And so chapters and verses were added only a couple hundred years ago. Only a couple hundred years ago. And the reason why, it's more for the sake of finding things quicker. So yeah, go to chapter 3, verse 1. But these are not written like chapter-wise, like the way a book is. So this is why I'm also extending chapter 2 into chapter 3, because that's the logic and the conversation. So I just want to encourage you, just because you end a chapter, don't treat it like a book. The next verse might, it might be very important to help you understand the previous one. So let's go ahead and let's read chapter 2, starting on verse 12. Is it verse 12? No, make sure. Okay, yeah, okay. Romans 2, verse 12. For all have sinned without the law, that will perish. For all who sin without the law will perish without the law. And all who sin under the law will be judged by the law. For the hearers of the law are not righteous before God, but the doers of the law will be justified. So when Gentiles, who do not by nature have the law, do what the law demands, they are a law to themselves, even though they don't have the law. They show that the work of the law is written on their hearts. Their conscience confirms this. Their competing thoughts either accuse them or even excuse them on the day when God judges what people have kept secret, according to my gospel through Christ Jesus. So now, if you call yourself a Jew, and rely on the law and boast in God and know that his will and approve the things that are superior, being instructed from the law. And if you are convinced that you are a guide for the blind, a light to those in darkness, an instructor of the ignorant, a teacher of the immature, having the embodiment of knowledge and truth in the law. Well, then, listen to this one. You then who teach another, don't you teach yourself? You who preach, you must not steal. But do you steal? You who say, you must not commit adultery. Do you commit adultery? You who detest idols, do you rob temples? You who boast in the law, do you dishonor God by breaking the law? For it is written, the name of God is blasphemed among the Gentiles because of you. Circumcision benefits you if you observe the law. But if you are a lawbreaker, your circumcision has become uncircumcision. So if any uncircumcised man keeps the law requirements, will not his uncircumcision be counted as circumcision? This is so weird. We'll keep going. All right. A man who is physically uncircumcised, but who keeps the law will judge you. Will judge you who are a lawbreaker in spite of having the letter of the law and circumcision. For a person, here's the point he's making with all that. For a person is not a Jew. I think I set a record with saying how many of those words in a small amount of time. But anyways, for a person is not a Jew who is one outwardly. For the true circumcision is not something visible in the flesh. On the contrary, a person is a Jew who is one inwardly. And circumcision is of the heart, by the Spirit, not the letter. That person's praise is not from people, but from God. Now, chapter 3. So what advantage does the Jew have? Or what is the benefit of it, of circumcision? Considerable. It's considerable in every way. First, they were entrusted with the very words of God. What then? If some were unfaithful, will their unfaithfulness nullify God's faithfulness? Absolutely not. Let God be true, even though everyone is a liar, for it is written that you must be justified in your words and triumph when you judge. But if our unrighteousness highlights God's righteousness, what are we to say? I am using a human argument. Is God unrighteous to afflict wrath? Absolutely not. Otherwise, how will God judge the world? But if by my lie God's truth abounds to his glory, why am I still being judged as a sinner? And why not say, just as people slanderously claim we say, Let us do evil so that good may abound. Their condemnation is deserved. All right, so you guys ever had a tough piece of flank steak that you have to chew like for 5 minutes before you swallow it, because if not, you're going to choke? You know what I'm saying? You know, when you got something that you really got to chew on, it's like you got to slow down. Okay, I present to you, some flank steak, all right? There are some sections of the Bible that I guarantee you somebody was like, you lost me on therefore, all right? I get it. Now, but you got to ask yourself this. If this is tough, why is it there? Because obviously, and why written it that way? This isn't Paul. This is, again, the Holy Spirit. Sometimes, the Holy Spirit inspired these words. And so some of the toughest parts in Scripture, it's just me saying this, I think that because there's a lot of stuff that's very easy, low-hanging fruit, easy to understand. Okay, I think I get it, move on. This one you really got to double back on, which we're going to do. Why? Because sometimes these tough truths have to really go at us. And so, meaning, sometimes you need hard truth to be able to get through a hard heart and somebody with a hard head. And so, let's not ignore this. Let's dive right back in and let's you look at some of this. But just to kind of set this up, like, what is happening? What is this whole big deal? Now, if you've been watching the last couple of weeks, I've been using the analogy of a courtroom a lot because that's kind of the theme in here. Paul is literally kind of showing this, and so I'm going to use this one more time. So I don't know if you've ever watched videos, whether on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, that you have a bunch of convicted people, and they're all sitting kind of like you guys, all in one thing, and they're all wearing orange, right? It's a good call on the orange today, but they're all wearing orange, and then they take turns, right? They take turns, and then they stand before the judge. All right, why are you here? And sometimes they'll issue just quick judgments based on that. So let's imagine all of you guys online, you're the bystander watching, all right? And let's imagine you all there, and then one of you is, what's a serious crime? Maybe murder, vehicular manslaughter, right? A DUI, you robbed a bank, all right? Things like that, okay? So you got all of these things, and then one of you is there for something very, very petty. One of you is there because you were driving and you crossed a solid line. Anybody? You know you're not supposed to do that, by the way, right? You crossed a solid line. And then you got pulled over, all right? I can speak from experience because my first ticket at 18 was I crossed a solid line. I'm a genius because the cop was literally behind me and I didn't even bother looking at the rearview mirror. So, all right. Anyways, with that, all right? Let's say one of you, all you do is cross the line, but everyone else crossed a major line, right? How would you feel? I mean, already there you're seeing that those big ones issued, 5 years and 10 years and this and that. You're like, listen, I just crossed a solid line. Man, I get a slap on the wrist, maybe 10, community service hours, fine ticket, something like that. And let's say you come up, you plead your case, everyone sits down, and the judge says, everyone is guilty, and you all get the same punishment. How would you feel if you were the one who just crossed the line compared to everyone else? That's not fair. But what if then the judge tells you, listen, it's not about whether, the seriousness of each individual crime. You are all being judged because none of you could keep the law perfectly, which makes you all equally guilty. That's kind of what's happening in this section. That's what's happening in this section, which is what Paul is trying to do here. He's trying to help them and get them to understand this one thing between Christians across the board and some others. He is dismantling every argument, excuse, and defense that anybody can have to say, well, I am saved because of lame excuses. So that's what he's doing here. And so this is a tough word, and this was a tough piece of scripture because it's one that is tough to believe. And so I'm gonna put it right in front of you. He was like, okay, I get it. Now it's going to be up to you whether you believe it or not. Because regardless of the rule follower and the rebel, you all stand equal. The best rule follower is just as guilty as the rebel in God's eyes. And by the end of the message today, you're going to understand what seems very condemning. I mean, this was tough, right? This would sound very negative. But what appears to be very condemning, what we just read, is actually going to be very encouraging by the end. So you just got to chew on it, all right? So let's chew on it some more. All right, first off, kind of the setting up here. Let's just double back. There's really only 2 points we're making. Paul is talking about the law written on our hearts and the law written on tablets of stones. Only 2 things. So The first one in verse 12. For all who sin without the law will perish without the law. All who sin under the law will be judged by the law. So he's putting both equal. That's the statement that we started with. And then he gave examples. Now, when we see, I think mine says Gentiles, maybe some of your translations might say Greek. That just means a non-Jew. And so here's the thing. In that the Jewish people, because they received the law of God, the 10 Commandments and all of these things, they had a unique and special relationship with God. And they felt that they were on another level. They felt that they, had a special status compared to the world. And so they had a calling in the world, though. God says, I want my people to be a blessing to the nations, to let them know who I am, so the nations can come. Because if you read in the Old Testament over and over again, God literally says very clear. I mean, even Jesus quotes this, that my house shall be a house of prayer for all the nations. And so in the Old Testament, God is constantly highlighting, listen, I want to do something through one select nation to reach the nations. I want to do something with one to reach them all. And so there was something that God was doing, but there was an understanding or misconception, because I'm like, well, these guys, what about the people who have never heard the law? How will God judge them? Good example here. Ready? Have you ever heard this one? How will God judge somebody who never heard the gospel? Same idea. Have you ever thought about that one? I'm talking about something to chew on. I'll give you another one that just really bothered me. All right. Somebody on the other side of the world died the same day Jesus died. What about him? I'll put another one. Somebody died on the day Jesus rose from the dead and did not get to hear the news. What about him? You feel me on that one? These are all legit questions. What about these people? What about these people? What happens to somebody who never heard the gospel, who didn't hear the good news of Jesus? Is there any hope for them? That was one. And so Paul kind of drops a really serious and tough news here. Says regardless if they've heard the gospel or not, they are still going to be held accountable by how they responded to what they have heard or experienced in one way or another. Now, this is a part where you got to wrestle with, talking about questioning. You were talking about earlier. Can you ask a tough question to God without questioning his character? Yes, you can. Because is God a just God? Well, if you believe in him to be a just God, then you know that he's going to be fair with somebody who did not hear. Because then the argument is that, so if you're telling me, all right, so if God treats those people on a different, then why bother sharing the gospel? Maybe it's a good thing not to share the gospel because God is going to treat them with a little bit more leniency. People make that argument. Paul was highlighting that. He says, no, we don't play this game. And so he talks about this idea that though some people might not have heard the gospel or the law, we all have an internal law in ourselves. That when we look at the world, when we look at things, it's logical to assume we see order in this world. We see different things that's like, this is not just random chance. How did this come about? We see the differences between humans and animals. There is a major difference, guys. I mean, literally, it's like when we look at those things, we see something is different. And not only that, Paul says, look, even those that don't have a law unto themselves. Because have you ever at any point felt guilty for anything? Have you? I'm sure you've done something like, I shouldn't have done that. Where does that feeling come from? Where does that feeling come from? Of, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't do that. Where does that feeling come from when you know I need to be better? That's not right. When you judge someone else, which we talked about last week, that's wrong. According to who? And by the way, where does we get this idea of wrong and right? Where does this all come from? And that is speaking to the point right there, that there is something in us that has been a determining factor that we are living in somebody else's world. And I love this exercise. Let's do a quick one here. All right? Maybe you know the 10 Commandments, maybe not. Let's come up with our own 10 Commandments right now. All right? Real quick, with everybody here online, wish you could participate. I don't got my phone, so I can't see your comments unless somebody shouts it out. All right? Let's come up with our own 10 Commandments. All right? What is top 10 commandments? Right now, we're going to nullify God's. No, we're not. All right? So, you know what I'm saying? We're replacing it with a new one. We get to choose. Commandment number 1. What's something don't do this? All right? And no, let's not go lame on Pineapples don't belong on pizza. All right, let's not do one of those. All right, let's not do one of those. Can we come up with some? What's a for sure, like, yeah, all right, for sure, let's not kill people. Let's not murder. That's definitely right. I mean, another thing we can come up with. I mean, I was like, no, but the original sounds pretty good, though. Huh? Dude, thou shalt not cross a solid line. All right, so there you go. What else? What else do you see? What else is something we can come up with? It's like, don't drive slow in the left lane. All right, yep. All right, that's one. Don't drive slow in the left lane. Give me one more, another one, random. Okay, so let's not hurt any animals, all right? That's all right, let's run that. Let's not hurt any animals. Give me one more. Give me, Andre, give me. Don't ride on the grass. Yeah, don't ride. Listen, bike lines on my grass, ew, disgusting, all right? Okay, let's just stop there. I want you guys to know that even if we just did those 4 and it says, keep that for the rest of your life, I'm telling you now, you won't be perfect. Because what happens if, let's just say, or on accident, you're walking and you stepped on a bug. Guilty. You just hurt an animal. Right? Let's just say you're riding your bike like a good boy should on the sidewalk. But then, I don't know, a dog is running at you, and so you cut through the grass to get inside. Guilty. It's like, guilty. Let's just say you're driving on the left lane and you just kind of zoned out for a minute and you just paid for like 2 seconds and you went a little slower than normal. Guilty. All right. Can't go vegan. Yeah, I was like, look. All right. Look. So notice that we can come up with our own laws. And even you couldn't even keep your own law. And just because even the fact that think of that we come up with rules and stuff like that. This is all built into us. There is something about that. And God will judge you equally. So imagine driving. Now, I'm old enough to remember driving pre-GPS. All right? Anybody with me on that? So, you had to print out the MapQuest and stuff like that. So imagine that. Imagine two of you are driving from Tampa to Texas. All right? So you're driving from Tampa to Texas. One of you has the high-tech GPS, the best of the best. Shows you every little thing, every which way, traffic, this, where the cops are and not, back roads, all of that. And the other person doesn't even have a map. All you have to do, all you're left with is looking at road signs to figure it out. One has road signs, natural road signs. The other one has a GPS. But you both run a red light. Both guilty. And that's what Paul is trying to say. I don't care if you have the ultimate GPS ever and someone else is just determining on nature. We both all equally stand guilty before God. This is a problem that you need to understand. We would all get a ticket regardless of that. And why? And this is the thing, guys, that is a tough one for us to understand. Because we don't experience and know anybody and understand the true definition of holiness. God is holy. Which means he doesn't have an ounce of wickedness or darkness at all. And just like kind of polar opposite magnets, have you ever tried to, as a little kid, you ever take those magnets and try to force magnets that are the same and and it's like pushing against each other? That's holiness and unholiness. God cannot mix as a holy God with unholiness. And so this is an understanding that's hard for us because we don't get holy like that. None of us are in this way. But because he is, and because God is just, he has to hold people accountable regardless of one way or another. But the good news is God will hold us accountable by what we respond to. And that's the other thing, because last week there was a verse that we read, and it was this understanding of knowing, and it's not so much ignorance, because God also knows the secrets of your heart. And someone can say, God, I never heard, I never knew. I was like, you just refuse to want to know. God even knows your heart at that level. This is why he can judge us faithfully, because he can see the real you. Some people, even those that don't know, God will judge, did you want to know? Or did you refuse to know? And God will hold us accountable in that way. So rather than ignoring the conviction of our hearts, notice he says, this is something that we either accuse or excuse. It's not that bad. I'm good. That's literally what Paul's saying. We either accuse ourselves or excuse. But rather than ignore that conviction, guys, we need to allow and understand. You know what that conviction is meant to do? Actually point us to Christ. make you uncomfortable to hopefully you move more towards him, because he's the only one that can help us to deal with guilt and deal with all of those things. I want you guys to understand, some of you maybe have a big burden, and some of you, this is normal. This is all of us. We all deal with burdens like shame, guilt, and regret. Yep. Do you understand? I know those may be negative, but do you understand all of those are kind of like a gift? Because all of them are meant to make you so uncomfortable, to move you to him. Because he can help you to deal with your guilt. He can help you to deal with your shame. He can help you to really, set you free and address those things. And so those are gifts to want to bring you closer to him. But what the enemy wants and what the devil wants is to get those things to then motivate you away from him. And it's up to us and how we respond, our understanding who God is. So when it comes to those without the law, bad news, man, bad news. It doesn't matter whether they heard or not. God will hold them accountable. But then he goes to the Jews. So notice there was a lot of Jewish language there, all right? I don't know, I think all of us hit our quota with the word circumcision today, just on hearing that one alone, right? It was a little awkward to get through. But he brings that up because now he shifts his attention to the Jews, because the Jews thought, especially the Christian Jews in this church, they had the law written on, slabs of stone. And they thought, we're going to get special treatment. Why? Because we're his kids. We're the God's chosen people. And so we're going to get special treatment. God will give us an A for effort, because they knew they couldn't keep the law. Because one of the requirements was, if you broke anything, someone has to die. Sorry about the hurting the animals thing, but that was it. And so that was one. Do you guys know that the law required, literally, it was a capital punishment. If you broke the law of God, capital punishment. And so God created this institution of grace, which says, listen, I'll allow, this is what I want you to do. And it was all to teach us something. An innocent animal must be punished for something it did not do. An innocent animal must be punished and must be put to death for the sins of another. And if that way, sin can be judged and the guilty could be set free. And that's what would happen. And so they had to do that. And that was a constant reminder. Every time they had to bring the next animal, every time they had to do that, it was a reminder. This should be me. But God has given me a chance of a second chance. And ultimately that pointed to Jesus, where Jesus became because guys, they were doing this for hundreds of years, 1,000 years. And guess what? There would no amount of animals would be enough to be able to say, enough? Is this enough? No. But Jesus came and was one and done. He was the ultimate sacrifice that all he needed is one and done, no more. Perfect. That's good enough for anybody who would believe. But they thought the Jews were like, all right, listen, I get it. We're not perfect. Who is? They would say that. But you know what? But we're the Jewish people. I mean, we got a calling. Notice he was saying that in verse 2. He was like saying, you boast about these things. You're an instruct to the ignorant. Like you're supposed to be and tell the world about God. And you have a special, unique role in your life. But they thought God's going to give us A for effort. He's going to grade us on a curve because we got the law. And that's when Paul kind of pulls the rug out from under them too. He says, Guys, okay, do you guys know, math has changed in the last couple of years, right? Math has changed. And so there was a time in which, and you're a teacher, so I don't know if you got this, but I remember even being involved in the public school, and thought that you might be able to speak in this too. There was a movement in which they were saying, let's say, for example, math. You can get the wrong answer, but if they wanted to see your work, remember who remembers showing your work? Right? Like, who hated that? Showing your work. But you had to show your work. So okay, you didn't just copy. You were thinking. So there was a movement even with math, like saying, as long as you showed your work, even though you got the wrong answer, sticker for you. You get it, We'll let you pass because at least you tried. All right, you guys remember some of this? That was a little bit, yeah, see, like confirmation with some teachers. So now obviously we want to encourage, okay, you're thinking, but eventually you got to learn to get the right answer, right? Where did you go wrong? But, that was one element there. So the Jews were like, listen, you see our work is enough, even though we're not getting the results, but at least we're trying. He's like, no, it's not. Guys, imagine a lifeguard. I don't know if anyone's ever been a lifeguard before. Imagine a lifeguard. And he's out there, and he's a very knowledgeable lifeguard. He knows all the backstrokes and all of this and all of that. He knows it all. He knows all the pool rules. And he's making sure to tell you, no running, no diving on the shallow end. He knows all of the rules, the why, the how, the pH levels of the pool. He knows it all. But how would you view and treat this lifeguard that would tell others to follow rules, yet the lifeguard would not follow it himself? Obviously. And let's make it worse. Not only does the lifeguard not only follow the rules himself, lifeguard doesn't even know how to swim. All right? What do you think? Yeah, the lifeguard would need a real lifeguard. That's the Jewish people. That's what Paul is trying to say. He's like, you guys think you know what you're doing? Bro, you don't even know how to swim. You don't even know how to swim. Yeah, you know, but salvation is not based on what you know. Because, the demons believe in Jesus. It's not doing them any good. The devil believes in who Jesus is. He'll admit, yeah, he's for real. But knowledge does not save us. Knowledge does not change us. And so the thing, guys, with us is, and this is natural for all of us, so it's a warning for all of us. You and I all love to grab for low-hanging fruit. We all like to go for what's easy. And what is easy? To be able to determine my salvation based on my church attendance, based on my prayer time, based on how much Bible I'm reading, based on how good I am compared to somebody else. To believe it or not, that is easy. And we like to look at those things to determine and to make us feel better about ourselves. But Paul is saying you are playing a dangerous game, because the only thing you can rely on is Jesus and nothing else. But no. This isn't Jesus Plus, right? We already got Hulu Plus, Disney Plus. Everyone lives with Jesus Plus. Like Jesus and. No, it is Jesus, period. It's not Jesus Plus. It is Jesus, period. And that's what he's trying to get them to understand. This is why, again, the whole thing with the circumcision was weird. But again, that was a big deal for them. Because they thought, well, all right, it's just physical. It's all on the outside. And he was like, no, it doesn't matter, because the good that you do gets canceled out by all the other things. The good you can, by the way, notice this. You know that you can do a good deed with the wrong attitude and you're canceled out. Still wrong. You can do a good deed with the wrong attitude and it's not right. Because sin is more than something you do. It is who you are. It is the feelings and thoughts and all of it behind. It is the bigger problem. It is a plague, guys. This is a big deal. And so this is why he says a true Jew, by the way. When he says Jew, he means a true believer, a true person of God. This does not mean we all need to grow our sideburns and we need to do all that. We need to go kosher now. Forget the other one. You said vegan, not kosher. That's a different world. And so, it doesn't mean we all have to go kosher. We all have to sing songs differently, right? And do all. No. A true Jew means a true believer, a true chose person is someone that is marked on the inside by what they believe, not determined by what you portray on the outside, by how you behave. Now, how you behave should display what's on the inside. The outside should match what's on the inside a little. It should show, but it is not the foundational. Does that make sense, guys? Does that make sense? It's not the foundation. It's important, but it is not the most essential. It goes from the inside out. Too many of us want to hide on the outside, and guess where we got that from? If you read Genesis, the very beginning, Adam and Eve's first thing when they found out they were sinners, what they want to do? The first cover-up in human history. All right, literally. The first cover-up of a crime in human history was Adam and Eve when they covered themselves up with the fig leaves, which, by the way, was the evidence. Something that they actually took the leaves from the tree of knowledge of good and evil and used it to cover themselves. I'm like, oh, really, bro? I was like, you couldn't try something else? I was like, you're literally riddled and covered in the thing that you just I think that's beautifully ironic if that's the case. But I was like, really? It's like a kid. I was like, I didn't eat the candy, got chocolate all over their face, That's kind of Adam and Eve in that moment there. And notice that we want to cover things up. But it's something on the inside, a change that has happened on the inside. And so I want to go through 3 because this is where I probably lost 90% of you. In chapter 3, verse 1 through 8. So Carlos, we're going to run this one. Literally, what happens in chapter 3, verse 1 and 8, Paul is having a rhetorical back and forth with himself. I don't know if you kind of caught that. At one point, you're saying, wait, who's talking now? Is this Paul? What is he doing? He's having a rhetorical Q&A because he knows that some of you might draw to some conclusions based on what I'm saying Oh, no, I'm not going to let you go there. So he has a rhetorical Q&A I want to walk you through. So watch this. Let's look at 1 and 2. In chapter 3, verse 1 and 2, he says, so what advantage does the Jew have? What benefit is the circumcision? So right there, he's kind of eviscerated everything that is Jewish. And so he wants them to know, like the rhetorical question, is there any advantage to any of this? That's the rhetorical question somebody might ask, because he kind of showed there isn't. But he says, no, there is. There is. Like, he's not diminishing the Jewish people. He's not saying you don't matter anymore. He's not saying that the church replaces the Jewish people, which was a big controversy and a big thing back in the day. So he's saying, no, listen, if you were a Jew, it is a great privilege. Because what nation, if that's your DNA, what nation can claim to say that history? What nation can have and say, no, listen, if God has chosen you, and if you are a part of the Jewish people, that is a major responsibility. So it's not that it doesn't matter. Oh, no, it kind of matters more. But he's just trying to encourage them. So that way the Jew that's there is like, oh, do I matter anymore? Like, no, yeah, it's nice. It's nice. I'm not saying like that. Don't go that far. I know some people, it probably hurt their feelings or whatever. But no, it's okay. There's a lot of good things that actually can help us to understand. So that was the first one. Then he goes in the next one in verse 3. So then he asks the question, what then? This is another rhetorical question. What then? If some were unfaithful, will their unfaithfulness nullify God's faithfulness? That was in verse 3. And so what he's saying is this, okay, well, all right. So if God does not save all of us because we've all messed up, but come on, man, there's some people, like there's some that we're better than others. Like, so if we're God's chosen people, if some of us messed up, are we all done? And so Paul says, no, that's when we say, no, absolutely not. No. See, God's faith, our unfaithfulness does not cancel out God's faithfulness. And so just because you got other people in the party kind of messing things up, it doesn't mean that God's going to blame you for somebody else. Meaning you got non-believing Jews and believing Jews. So is God just going to throw the baby out with the bathwater? No. He's going to judge you individually. Do you see what I'm saying? That's what he's trying to say there, because some were thinking, so we got a few people that are messing up for everybody. And it was like, no. Calm down. Absolutely not. Let God be true, even though everyone is a liar. And so a little bit of kind of that idea, the comparisons. And when he says that you may be justified in your words and triumph when you judge, the you is God. That was an Old Testament phrase. And so God is going to be justified in his judgment. Meaning I will be fair. God's not going to be, all right, let's say if, 90% of you guys are going to heaven, or I think the scary part is I think it's completely flipped the other way. But let's just say there's not going to be a clerical error. Like he's going to get there's going to be a thing in which Grace is like, oh, wait, where did Grace go? No, not that, my bad. Oops. And then we got to issue an apology, and like, okay, listen, Grace, I'm sorry. Your paperwork got stuck to somebody else's, Yeah, I'm so sorry. We're going to upgrade your mansion. Don't worry. Saying that's not going to happen. Like no one's going to go somewhere on accident or an oops. Okay. God was tired and he just oh man, what, he's not going to have a moment like that. So God is going to be justified in his decision. So he'll be faithful to those who believe. That's it. Okay. Look at the other one. Verse 5. This one now it gets a little, and then we're going to wrap up. Verse 5 through 8. Now, but if this one's a good one. Oh my gosh. If our unrighteousness highlights God's righteousness, then what are we to say? I'm using a human argument. Notice, human meaning. This is poor thinking. I'm using a human argument. Is God unrighteous to afflict wrath? And now I'm going to just read the other two because they're the same. Absolutely not. Otherwise, how will God judge the world? And then this is the same question but said differently. But if by my lie God's truth abounds, why am I also being judged as a sinner? You know what he's saying? The argument that somebody would say is like, all right, hold on. So Paul, let me get you straight. Because we're sinners, and the negative thing of what that is, and when God judges sinners, he is proven to be righteous, and he's proven to be a holy God. But then that's weird, because if me doing bad makes God look good, then why does he punish me? Do you see the idea? Like, why is he punishing for me if I'm making him look good? That's the argument. You following me? That's it. That's what he's saying. In essence, like, wait, if God is punishing me and my poor whatever, being a sinner is what makes God look good and proves him to be good, then is he just and righteous in judging me? Is it fair? Why? That doesn't make sense. Because then you see, that's the logical argument, but it's human. It's not. It's illogical. All right. It's an illogical one, and so that's why he says absolutely not. Absolutely not. He says, how else will God judge the world? Because you got to go down to the foundational premise, because that one means, wait, God must not be fair. That's the same question with Adam and Eve. Did God really say you're not supposed to eat? Listen, don't trust him. That's the same style argument. When he says, if you being bad makes him look good, then why does he punish you? He must not be good then. You see where what he's saying without saying it? Whoo, sneaky, sneaky. Sneaky, sneaky. All right? And so the thing with that, and he says absolutely not. Because if God doesn't judge sinners, then how is he proven to be good? And because he is good, he has to. And so no, that is a foundationally flawed argument. Because notice he says, and some say, just as some people slanderously claim we say, let us do evil so that good may come. So some were actually spreading a rumor that Paul would say this. I'm like saying, guys, the more we sin, the more it highlights God's goodness. So let's get to work and let's wild out. That's because they thought, and there were some people that would do that. They would think if being bad makes God look good, then let's get better at being bad. Because then we're going to make him look really good. That's the argument. But notice what Paul's answer to this. Can you, Carlos, put it up? Look at verse 3, verse 8. Paul's answer to this question is, their condemnation is deserved. Their condemnation is deserved. Whoever asks and thinks this. Now, what he is saying is this. If you think like that, you're not saved. You're not saved. And if you think like that and act, let's just pile it on, man. Let's pile it on here. Oh, you're going to earn what's coming to you, man. If you're going to have that attitude, you're going to earn it. And now Paul's not happy about that. He's not happy with, they're going to get what's coming to him. No, it's like, listen, you're going to get what's coming to you if you're going to have that kind of thinking and living. This ain't the way. Because, guys, a true Christian, somebody who is confronted with the horrors of their sin, and then seeing how horrific Christ was treated, punished for their sins. An innocent person, he was punished for the sins of many. And for you to go, thanks, Jesus, now I can just have fun and be all right with it? Bro, appreciate you, boy. Look at you. Thanks for looking out. Thanks for looking out, man. Now I can just do whatever I want. I don't have to worry about it because I know I'm going to be saved and forgiven. Woo, let's have some fun now. No, it's the complete opposite. When you see someone that loved you so much being treated the certain way because of you, it's your fault, my fault, that should change you. That's what repentance is, should change you. Because a true Christian will not be casual with the very sin God was punished for. So if you know he was punished for your sin, you wouldn't be casual to keep doing it. Notice I said casual, like it's not a big deal. It's not. It is a big deal. And so this is the first time, guys, that we read this word justified. That the sinner is justified. First time, and you're going to notice that one's now going to echo over the next few chapters. That is a massive word, because what to justify means to be declared something. So if I justified you, it's me declaring you are innocent. It is a legal declaration. Now, I used an image, an illustration last week, and I want to repeat it, but I want to give you the other side of it. So in John 18, as an image of what does it mean to be justified, all right? I want you to remember those scales. Because to be justified, you are not justified based on the amount of good you do versus the bad you've done. You are justified and declared innocent based off of, did you trust in Jesus or not? That's it. And none of you can claim, I didn't know. I was like, oh, no, you can't do that. So I want you to look at this. Now in John 18, this is right after the Last Supper. And everyone goes down into the garden. Jesus is praying. And so I said this illustration. I'm going to repeat it for those who missed it, but I want to give you the side B to it. There was another element. And so everyone shows up. Judas shows up with the torches, and everyone there is to take Jesus. He gives them the kiss, identifying this is the man. This is the one who is, I'm going to betray him. And so once they kiss him, now they go after and they try to get him, arrest him. And Peter's like, not on my watch, all right? And so Peter takes a sword out and just starts hacking and takes a dude's ear right off. Dude missed. He was going for his head and just clipped the ear. But he clipped the ear and they were able to subdue him. Jesus says, stop no more, takes the ear, puts it back on and heals it like if nothing ever happened. At that point, Peter runs, everyone runs, they take Jesus along. And I highlighted that because John, that actually is seen all throughout the Gospels, but the Gospel of John is the only one to name him. And it says his name was Malchus, the servant of the high priest. And guys, if you assault the servant of a high priest, that comes with a huge penalty. But what happened? Jesus healed this guy's ear. So if anybody wanted to tell and hold Peter in front and saying, Judge, high priest, your assistant was assaulted. Nah, tell me. Well, I was like, nah, Malchus? You telling me Malchus? What happened to Malchus? And I was like, yeah, man, look, bro, this guy went nuts. Look at Peter. He cut his ear off. He assaulted him with a sword. I was like, come on, Malchus, come here. Let me see that. And I was like, well, what happened? And when he looks at Malchus's ear, what is he going to see? Whoa, he's going to see an ear. Okay, I was like, right? But you're not. Nothing happened. Now, again, did Peter cut his ear off? Yes. Did he commit a crime? Yes. Should he be punished for that? Yes. Is there any evidence that he committed the crime? Because Jesus restored the ear. There is no, so though it be true, he would be justified, meaning declared innocent. You and I justify things all the time. This is what we make excuses. You need a better definition of justification, guys. If you justify, listen, let me justify why I had my third bowl of cereal last night, okay? All right? That's not justification. That's called making excuses, okay? But in English, we use the word to justify something. No, here, you are justified. You're declared innocent of your charges. Now let's think of Malchus, though. Think of Malchus. Put yourself in his shoes. What was Malchus doing there? By orders of the high priest, and what is he doing? He's there to arrest Jesus. And he's there, by the way, they are unjustly arresting him. And they did a mock trial that went against the law. Their own law. They broke their own law to judge Jesus. Malchus is there. And it's ironic. He is the servant of the high priest, and he is a part of the mob that is unjustly treating the great high priest himself, Jesus, the king of Israel. He's a part of the mob. And so what does he deserve? If there was a crime against committing if there was a penalty against a crime against the assistant to or a servant to the high priest, imagine the high priest himself. And what does Jesus do? Shows him grace, shows him love, restores what was lost, heals him, and now Malchus has to deal with, wait, what just happened? Now Malchus is left with, what is going on here? And so now, number one, Malchus has nothing to declare and claim. He can't say anything anymore because of that. But now he is left with that. He is guilty. And instead of being judged, Jesus was generous and he was gracious to him. Now, guys, we don't know why John names Malchus. One theory is that Malchus became a believer. Imagine that. That'd be beautiful. We could see, dude, let me see the ear. All right? I was like, let me see. No way. It looks great. I was like, that would be really cool if he was there. There's one idea that Malchus became a believer. That's why he's named in John. Because, by the way, people were still alive, so you can go talk to Malchus. Or maybe you can go see someone who knew Malchus and to confirm it. Others, because we knew it was Malchus, maybe he wasn't a believer, but there was people who knew. There was a rumor there, and people knew, and you can confirm it. Did that really happen? So we don't know why, but here's all we do know. The only thing that we know about Malchus is he did what? He was at the wrong place at the wrong time. He was doing the wrong thing. That's all we know of him. All we know of him, but yet, here's the thing. Though he did not live, let's say even compare him to Peter. Though he did not live the life that Peter lived that we know of. If all he did was that. But yet Jesus would declare him justified in the same way he would have done Peter, in the same way he would have done anybody else who lived a better life. Because for God, he doesn't play favorites. Anyone who believes will be saved. Anyone who trusts in him, regardless if you're worse or whatever. And so that's a good thing to be able to see, and to be able to, he would declare him just as innocent, doing all that he did against him, than anyone else. And so that's the beautiful truth that we see this, guys. Again, what sounded very condemning. I mean, this was a negative sentence, a negative statement. I mean, it sounds negative, but it's good, because it's trying to show that Jesus can justify anyone who trusts in him. Anyone who trusts in him. None of you can out-sin his love. None of you can out-sin that. Anyone can be justified. And so the whole purpose, guys, of this little section here is not to condemn necessarily, because it kind of low-key is. But the whole purpose of this section is not only to condemn, but to confront you with your need for Christ. You're only one. That is what he's trying to do here. And why is this such a tough one? Because we want to hold on tight to every other excuse on why we're okay with God instead of the one most important. That's why this text is so tough, because we don't want to let go. We don't want to, because it literally puts you at a leap of faith to a certain extent. And guys, listen, the reality is that the Jesus' work on the cross is enough to do a work in and through you. All you have to do is believe. And then thinking that our good deeds will save us is kind of like the conclusion, if you can think of this. Thinking that our good deeds can save us, or that God would cause us to treat us any differently, it's like trying to cure cancer by eating candy. I want you to think of that, all right? You trying to save yourself with your own deeds is like you trying to cure cancer in your body by eating candy alone. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. It might taste good for a moment, but it doesn't help. Can't cure cancer with candy, and you can't cure your soul by trying harder, by being better. That's actually good news, because a lot of people in this world, maybe some of you, have this burden of not feeling good enough. I'm not good enough. Not good enough. Haven't been good enough for my mom. Haven't been good enough for my dad. Some of you, bro, I'm not good enough for my spouse. No matter how hard I try, I'm not good enough. Some of you, I'm not good enough for my parents. Always, they're just bringing it, man. It's like, I'm not good enough for anybody. And then you try, you're in school, maybe you don't get the grades, but I'm just not good enough at this. You try, and you're trying to advance in your work and seeing other people leapfrog after you. I'm just not good enough. That's a serious fear, and there's a lower key truth to that. None of us are good enough, and that's okay to embrace when you understand the opposite side. But Jesus is good enough. Jesus is good enough. I am putting a window in front of you, guys. A window can reflect your image back on you, and you can see I'm not good enough. But the window, you can also see through it. And you need to see through your reflection to Christ on the other side, saying, I'm good enough. Will you just trust me? That's it. I am good enough. Do you just trust me? And when you do that, you can find that sense of, again, not just salvation, but a total healing of the mind, of the heart, of the soul, that only God can do, because he is good enough. And that's what Paul is trying to say here. If you're hanging at the edge of a cliff and you're trying to grab onto any rock you can to save yourself, but what Paul is trying to say, no, not that, nope. He's only extending one rope, and it's trust in Christ. That's it. And now for some of you, I'm like saying, okay, this sounds too basic, sir. This sounds too basic. This sounds like you're just only talking to believers. I mean, non-believers. Like, if someone's in the room, well, first off, yes, I am. Because only God knows. Because there were some people probably in this Roman church that they thought they were saved because they were Christians, or at least they thought they were on the outside. I can't see that. Only God knows. So that I want you who thinks you're saved, what's your answer? How do you know you're saved? If you say, well, you got the wrong pronoun already. Wrong subject to your sentence. If your answer is because there's only one way you can say that. Because I trust him. Because Jesus said so. I trust him. My faith is when he did, not on anything I can do. And so if you're grabbing onto whatever to save you, to fulfill you, none of that is good enough but Jesus. But then as a believer, that's not just a one and done thing. Now what do? Hold on. Because literally there's going to be over and over again. If you want to grow in your faith, if you want to be able to, then you just do the same thing. In the same way that God saves you by trusting in him, that's how you grow. By not saying, okay, well, I'm saved. Now what do I do? And figure this out. And you want to grow by your own good efforts and try-hardedness? No, man, it doesn't work like that. You hold on to him. He holds on to you. He shapes you and he molds you. And listen, when he gets your affections, actions follow. He wants your affections. He wants your heart. He wants to win over your heart to see this right here, that yes, there is no excuse. And before there was no way. But there is one. And we should be grateful, forever grateful, holding on to him. Because guys, when that's called transformative trust. And if you've been declared innocent, though you know you're guilty, oh, you should live differently. You should live differently. Marked by his love and who he is. And for some of you, maybe you hyper-focus, and believers, you're like, well, okay, how do I live for him? And what do I do? And listen, again, you got to be cautious. You don't want to put the cart in front of the horse again and trying to see, what can I do? I was like, no, hold on. Again, this is why it's shocking to me. Paul, over and over again, when he goes to all the other letters, the one thing we see over and over again, he says, listen, yeah, your good deeds matter. But he says, I got one prayer, and every single one of his letters says, man, I pray that y'all can do better. Nope. I pray y'all can just be better at doing. You know what he says over and over again? Man, I just pray y'all just know him, and that's it. Because the more you grow and convinced of who he is, what he has done, what he can do and is doing, he takes over the rest. And now you realize, what you were trying to manufacture, the Lord does by default. And you do it with a greater sense of joy and peace because you're not focused on what you're doing. You're focused on who he is. And when you put your focus on that, it changes everything. It changes your mind. It changes your heart. And it'll change your life, and it'll change somebody else's destiny.